The key turned in the lock with its familiar click, but nothing about this Tuesday evening felt familiar. Emma Richardson pushed open the door to her downtown Seattle apartment, expecting the usual silence that greeted her after long days at the architecture firm. Instead, she heard Ryan's voice coming from the bedroom, followed by a laugh she recognized all too well. Jessica's laugh. Emma's portfolio slipped from her fingers, architectural drawings scattering across the hardwood floor like fallen leaves. She stood frozen in the entryway, her mind refusing to process what her ears already knew. The voices grew clearer as she stepped deeper into the apartment. "Emma's working late again," Ryan was saying. "She always does on presentation days. We have at least 2 hours. I feel awful about this," Jessica replied, though her tone suggested otherwise. "She's my best friend." "Not for much longer," Ryan said. "I'm going to tell her soon. This charade is exhausting." Emma's hand found the wall for support. 3 years with Ryan. 5 years of friendship with Jessica. Both relationships crumbling in the span of 30 seconds. She backed toward the door, grabbed her keys, and left without a sound. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly as she walked toward the elevator, each step echoing in the silence. Her phone buzzed with a text from her boss, but she ignored it. 20 minutes later, she sat in her car outside Miller & Associates, staring up at the glass building where she'd spent the last 4 years designing her future. The presentation had gone well that afternoon. The client loved her urban renewal concept for the Belltown district. She'd felt proud, accomplished, ready to celebrate with Ryan and Jessica over dinner. The irony tasted bitter. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked. "Need to see you first thing tomorrow. Mr. Miller." A knot formed in her stomach. David Miller never texted after hours unless something was wrong. She tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. Emma drove home on autopilot, her mind spinning between Ryan's betrayal and her boss's ominous message. The apartment was empty when she returned. Ryan's clothes were gone from the bedroom floor, and Jessica's perfume lingered in the air like evidence of a crime. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat on the couch, staring at the engagement ring on her finger. 2 carats, princess cut, everything she'd once dreamed of. Now it felt like a weight dragging her hand down. Sleep didn't come. At 6 in the morning, she showered, dressed in her best suit, and arrived at the office an hour early. David Miller was already there, which never happened. "Emma, come in," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. His usually warm demeanor was replaced by something she'd never seen before. Discomfort. Guilt. "The Belltown project," she began, but he held up his hand. "The client loved your presentation yesterday. Your design is brilliant, as always. Then why do you look like you're about to fire me?" Miller sighed, removing his glasses and cleaning them unnecessarily. "The partnership voted last night. We're restructuring. Budget cuts across all departments. You're letting me go. Last hired, first released. I'm sorry, Emma. I fought for you, but the numbers don't lie." The words hit her like physical blows. "Last hired? I've been here 4 years. The partnership considers your official start date as when you became senior associate, which was 18 months ago." Emma felt her world tilting. "What about the Belltown project? My design will be completed by the remaining team." She signed the severance papers in a daze, packed her desk while her colleagues pretended not to watch, and found herself on the street by 10:30 in the morning. Unemployed, betrayed, alone. The rain started as she reached her car, fat drops that quickly turned into a downpour. She sat behind the wheel, engine off, watching water streak down the windshield like tears she couldn't cry. Her phone rang. "Ryan. We need to talk." "I already know." Silence. Then, "I'm sorry you found out this way." "How long?" 3 months. 3 months. While she'd been planning their wedding, choosing venues, discussing children. While she'd been working overtime to secure their future, he'd been planning his escape. "I'll get my things tonight," he said. "Jessica and we're going to try and make this work." Emma hung up without responding. The day passed in a blur of practical devastation. Calls to cancel wedding vendors. Explanations to concerned friends who'd heard about the breakup through Seattle's tight-knit professional network. Emails to headhunters who promised to see what was available, but offered no immediate hope. By evening, the rain had stopped, but Emma couldn't stay in the apartment. She drove aimlessly through Capitol Hill, then down to Pioneer Square, finally parking near the waterfront. The Moonlight Cafe glowed through its windows, one of the few places open all night. She ordered coffee she didn't want and sat at a corner table, staring out at Elliott Bay. The cafe was nearly empty except for a few night shift workers and insomniacs. She felt invisible, which suited her perfectly. That's when she saw him. A man sat 3 tables away, dressed in worn jeans and a black hoodie that had seen better days. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and when he looked up from his own untouched coffee, their eyes met. His were blue, the kind of blue that reminded her of deep water. Something in his expression mirrored her own exhaustion, her own sense of being adrift. Without thinking, without planning, without any rational explanation for her behavior, Emma stood up and walked over to his table. "I'm having the worst day of my life," she said. He looked up at her, and after a moment that felt like an eternity, he opened his arms. Emma stepped into the embrace of a complete stranger and finally let herself cry. The stranger's arms were steady around her, and for the first time in 24 hours, Emma felt like she could breathe. She cried against his shoulder for what felt like minutes, but was probably only seconds, then pulled back, mortified. "I'm so sorry," she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I don't know why I did that. I'm not usually. I don't just hug random people in cafes." "It's okay," he said, his voice deeper than she'd expected. "Sometimes we all need a moment." Emma looked at him properly for the first time. Mid-30s, maybe, with the kind of face that suggested he'd seen his share of difficult days. There was something in his eyes that made her think he understood exactly what she was feeling. "I should go," she said, but made no move to leave. "You should sit," he replied, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Your coffee's getting cold over there anyway." She hesitated, then retrieved her cup and sat down. The cafe was quiet except for the hum of the espresso machine and the occasional clink of dishes from the kitchen. Outside, Seattle's late-night traffic moved in slow streams of light. "Bad day?" he asked. Emma let out a laugh that had no humor in it. "Bad year, more like. Today was just the grand finale. Want to talk about it?" She studied his face, looking for signs of polite obligation or the kind of false concern strangers sometimes offered. Instead, she found genuine interest and something that looked like understanding. "Lost my job this morning," she said. "Found out my fiancé's been cheating on me with my best friend. Oh, and I'm pretty sure I'm about to lose my apartment because I can't make rent without a steady income. That's a lot for one day. The worst part is, I saw it coming. All of it. Ryan's been distant for months, and the company's been making cuts since spring. I just kept telling myself everything would work out if I worked harder, stayed positive, believed in people." The stranger nodded but didn't offer empty platitudes about things getting better or everything happening for a reason. Emma appreciated that. "What do you do?" he asked. "For work, I mean." "Architect. Was an architect. Specialized in urban renewal projects." She traced the rim of her coffee cup with her finger. "I used to think I was pretty good at it." "What made you think that?" "I won some awards in school, got hired at a good firm right out of graduate school. My designs usually got approved by clients." She shrugged. "Turns out being talented doesn't matter much when they need to cut costs." Their loss. Something in the way he said it made her look up. He wasn't just being polite. "What about you?" she asked. "What do you do?" "Business," he said after a pause. "Nothing as interesting as architecture. Business is broad." "What kind?" "The complicated kind." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "I'm Jay, by the way. Just Jay. It's easier." Emma sensed there was a story behind that, but didn't push. "I'm Emma. Emma Richardson." "Nice to meet you, Emma Richardson." Jay leaned back in his chair, studying her. "So what's your plan?" "Plan? For tomorrow. Next week. Getting back on your feet." Emma realized she hadn't thought that far ahead. "I guess I start looking for a new job. Cancel the wedding I was planning. Figure out how to pay rent." "In that order? Does it matter?" "Priorities usually do." She considered this. Rent first, then job hunting. The wedding can wait since there's no groom. Smart. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Emma found herself relaxing for the first time all day. There was something calming about Jay's presence, like being near someone who didn't need her to be anything other than what she was right now. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure. Why are you here?" "It's past midnight on a Tuesday. Most people are home sleeping." Jay was quiet for so long that Emma thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than before. "Sleep doesn't come easily sometimes. The cafe's quiet, the coffee's decent, and nobody asks questions. Insomnia? Something like that. Emma recognized the deflection but didn't press. Everyone had their secrets. Well, I'm glad you were here tonight, she said. I probably would have sat in my car and cried for another hour if I hadn't come in. Crying in cars is underrated. Very private. That made her smile. Speaking from experience? Once or twice. The barista called out that they'd be closing in 30 minutes. Emma glanced at her phone and was surprised to see it was nearly 2 in the morning. I should let you get home, Jay said, starting to stand. Wait. Emma didn't know why she said it, but something about the idea of going back to her empty apartment made her stomach clench. Would you maybe want to get breakfast somewhere? Later this morning, I mean. I know it's weird to ask, but it's not weird. Really. I know a place that opens at 6. Good pancakes. Emma felt something loosen in her chest. That sounds perfect. They exchanged phone numbers, and Jay walked her to her car. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets shiny and clean under the streetlights. Emma, he said as she unlocked her car door. Yeah. Whatever happened today, it doesn't define you. Remember that. She watched him walk away, hands in his pockets, disappearing around the corner like some kind of guardian angel in worn jeans. For the first time in days, Emma felt like maybe tomorrow might be different. She drove home through empty streets, thinking about breakfast and blue eyes and the strange comfort of being understood by someone whose last name she didn't even know. Emma's phone rang at exactly 9:15 on Friday morning, 3 days after her impromptu breakfast with Jay had turned into a 4-hour conversation about everything except their real lives. She'd been scrolling through job postings on her laptop, growing more discouraged with each application that required 5 years of experience she didn't quite have. Emma Richardson? The voice was crisp, professional, unfamiliar. Speaking. This is David Carter from Blackwell Enterprises. I'm calling regarding a position that might interest you. Emma sat up straighter. Blackwell Enterprises was one of the largest development companies in the Pacific Northwest, known for high-end commercial projects and urban revitalization. She'd never applied there. I'm sorry, but I think there's been a mistake. I didn't submit an application to Blackwell. No mistake. Your portfolio came to our attention through industry connections. We have an opening for a senior project architect on our Belltown initiative. Would you be available to discuss this opportunity? Emma's heart skipped. Belltown was the same district she designed the renewal project for at Miller & Associates. The project that had been her last before getting laid off. I'd be very interested, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Excellent. Could you come in this afternoon? Say 2 o'clock. 3 hours later, Emma stood in the lobby of the Columbia Center, looking up at the directory that listed Blackwell Enterprises as occupying floors 38 through 42. The elevator ride to the 39th floor felt like ascending to another world. David Carter met her in the reception area, mid-40s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of efficient demeanor that suggested he managed complex operations without breaking a sweat. Ms. Richardson, thank you for coming on such short notice. He led her through a maze of glass-walled offices and open workspace areas. I hope you don't mind diving right in. We're working against some tight deadlines. The conference room overlooked Elliott Bay, and Emma tried not to gawk at the view as Carter spread architectural plans across the table. Her breath caught when she recognized elements of her own Belltown design incorporated into the larger project. These look familiar, she said carefully. They should. Miller & Associates submitted this proposal last month, with your name as lead designer. Unfortunately, their firm withdrew from consideration due to staffing changes. Emma stared at the plans. Her urban green space concept was there, her mixed-use residential design, even her innovative storm water management system. Miller had sold her work after firing her. We were impressed with the vision, Carter continued. The integration of sustainable elements with historic preservation shows exactly the kind of thinking we need. When we learned you were available, it seemed like fate. How did you learn I was available? Carter's smile was polite but unrevealing. Seattle's architecture community is smaller than you'd think. Word travels fast. Emma studied the project scope. It was massive, easily 10 times larger than anything she'd worked on before. The budget alone made her previous projects look like college assignments. This is a significant undertaking, she said, which is why we need someone with fresh perspective and proven innovation. Your design philosophy aligns perfectly with our company values. What are those values? creating spaces that serve communities, not just investors. Building for the future while respecting the past. Making cities work for people, not the other way around. Emma felt a spark of excitement she hadn't experienced since graduate school. This was the kind of project she dreamed about working on. The salary is competitive, Carter said, sliding a folder across the table. Plus benefits, project bonuses, and a significant amount of creative autonomy. Emma opened the folder and tried not to react to the number on the offer sheet. It was 40% more than she'd been making at Miller & Associates. When would you need an answer? Ideally by Monday. We'd like you to start immediately if you're interested. Emma shook Carter's hand and left the building in a daze. On the street, she pulled out her phone to call Jay. They'd been texting throughout the week, and she found herself looking forward to his messages more than she wanted to admit. Guess who just got offered her dream job? She said when he answered. Emma? That's incredible. Tell me everything. They met at a coffee shop in Pike Place Market, and Emma found herself animated in a way she hadn't been in months as she described the project. Jay listened intently, asking smart questions about timeline and scope. Sounds like they really want you, he said. I can't figure out how they even knew about my work. Carter said word travels fast, but Miller only fired me 5 days ago. Maybe someone recommended you. But who? I haven't talked to anyone in the industry except... Emma paused. You don't happen to know anyone at Blackwell Enterprises, do you? Jay's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Why would you think that? You said you worked in business. You seem to know a lot about corporate dynamics. I read the news. Blackwell's been in the papers a lot lately. Emma let it drop, but filed the moment away. There was something Jay wasn't telling her, though she couldn't put her finger on what. Over the weekend, she researched everything she could find about Blackwell Enterprises. The company had been founded 20 years ago by Thomas Blackwell, who died in a car accident 5 years earlier. Now it was run by his son, though most articles focused on the company's projects rather than its leadership. Monday morning, Emma called David Carter and accepted the position. Excellent, he said. Report to the 39th floor at 8 tomorrow morning. Ask for me at reception. That evening, as Emma celebrated with takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant, her phone buzzed with a text from Jay. Heard through the grapevine that you got the job. Congratulations. Emma stared at the message. She hadn't told anyone except Jay about the offer. How exactly did his grapevine work? Emma's first week at Blackwell Enterprises passed in a whirlwind of meetings, site visits, and design reviews. The Belltown project was even more ambitious than she'd realized, encompassing 12 city blocks and requiring coordination with multiple city departments, community groups, and contractors. What struck her most was how smoothly everything progressed. Permits that usually took months had been fast-tracked. Community meetings that typically devolved into heated arguments were remarkably civil. Even the City Planning Commission seemed unusually cooperative. You're settling in well, David Carter observed on Friday afternoon as they reviewed her preliminary sketches for the residential component. The team speaks highly of your leadership. Everyone's been very welcoming, Emma replied, though something in Carter's tone made her pause. Almost too welcoming, actually. Meaning, I've worked on urban projects before. There's usually more resistance, more bureaucratic red tape. This feels different. Carter's smile was practiced. We've built strong relationships in this city over the years. People trust our vision. Emma nodded, but the explanation felt incomplete. That evening, she mentioned her observations to Jay over dinner at a small Italian place in Fremont. Maybe you're overthinking it, he said, twirling pasta around his fork. Sometimes projects just go smoothly. In 2 years of architecture work, I've never seen a project this size move this fast. It's like someone cleared the path ahead of time. Jay was quiet for a moment. Would that be a bad thing? Not bad exactly, just unusual. Emma studied his face. You're being evasive again. I'm eating pasta. You know what I mean. Every time I mention work, you get this look. What look? Like you know something I don't. Jay set down his fork and leaned back in his chair. Emma, some companies have more influence than others. Blackwell is one of the biggest development firms in the region. They know how to make things happen. It was a reasonable explanation, but Emma sensed there was more to it. She was beginning to realize that Jay deflected personal questions with the skill of someone who'd had practice. Tell me about your work, she said, changing tactics. What about it? You said business. What kind of business? Investment management. For who? Various clients. Emma laughed. Getting information from you is like pulling teeth. Do you work for the CIA or something? Nothing that interesting. Jay signaled for the check. I prefer talking about your work. It's more creative. They walked along the waterfront after dinner, and Emma found herself wondering why she felt so comfortable with someone who revealed so little about himself. There was something steady about Jay's presence that made her feel anchored, even when her life was in transition. Can I ask you something personal? She said as they paused near a bench overlooking the Sound. You can ask. Why did you help me that night at the cafe? A stranger crying on your shoulder isn't most people's problem. Jay was quiet for so long that Emma thought he wasn't going to answer. When he spoke, his voice was softer than usual. Sometimes you recognize something in another person. Pain, maybe. Or just the need to not be alone. You sounded like you were speaking from experience. Everyone has bad days. Emma wanted to press further, but something in his expression warned her off. Instead, she slipped her hand into his as they continued walking. He squeezed her fingers gently, and neither of them mentioned the gesture. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away in London, Victoria Sterling was having a very different kind of evening. She sat in the first-class lounge at Heathrow, waiting for her red-eye flight to Seattle, scrolling through surveillance reports on her tablet. For 5 years, she'd maintained careful tabs on James Blackwell's activities. Business meetings, social obligations, the few women he'd dated casually. Everything had followed predictable patterns until 3 weeks ago. The reports showed irregular behavior. Late-night coffee shops, dinner dates, long walks with the same woman multiple times. A woman who wasn't part of Seattle's usual social circles. Victoria studied the photographs her investigator had provided. Emma Richardson was pretty in an understated way, with the kind of natural beauty that didn't require expensive maintenance. Exactly the type James would find appealing in his current phase of playing common man. What concerned Victoria more was the timeline. Emma had been hired at Blackwell Enterprises just days after her first documented contact with James. That wasn't coincidence. Victoria closed the tablet and checked her watch. 6 hours until landing, then a quick trip to her Seattle penthouse to assess the situation personally. She'd built her life around becoming Mrs. James Blackwell, and some unemployed architect wasn't going to derail those plans. Back in Seattle, Emma was having trouble sleeping. She lay in bed thinking about the inconsistencies she'd noticed at work. The project moved too smoothly. Her hiring had happened too quickly, and Jay seemed to know more about corporate politics than any investment manager should. She got up and made tea, then pulled out her laptop. A simple Google search for Blackwell Enterprises leadership yielded dozens of articles about the company's projects, but very few photos of actual executives. Most featured David Carter or other vice presidents. After an hour of searching, she found one grainy photo from a charity event 2 years earlier. The caption identified James Blackwell, CEO, but the image was taken from too far away to make out clear features. Emma closed the laptop, frustrated. Tomorrow she'd ask Carter more direct questions about the company's structure. She needed to understand who she was really working for. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jay. Sweet dreams. See you tomorrow? Emma smiled despite her confusion and typed back. Always. She had no idea that tomorrow would bring answers she wasn't prepared for. Emma arrived at the office Tuesday morning with a list of questions about company hierarchy written in her notebook. She planned to corner David Carter after the morning briefing and get straight answers about Blackwell's leadership structure. Instead, Carter intercepted her at the elevator with news that derailed her plans entirely. Change of schedule today, he said, his usual calm demeanor replaced by something that looked like nervous energy. The CEO wants to review your Belltown proposal personally. Executive conference room, 9th floor, in 20 minutes. Emma's stomach dropped. The CEO? James Blackwell. He's been following the project closely. Apparently, your design approach caught his attention. I thought he didn't get involved in day-to-day operations. He doesn't usually, which is why this is significant. Carter handed her a fresh folder of presentation materials. Everything you need is here. Just be yourself. 20 minutes later, Emma stood outside the executive conference room on the 40th floor, trying to calm her nerves. She'd presented to CEOs before, but never one whose company could make or break her career. The receptionist gestured her inside. Mr. Blackwell will be with you in just a moment. Emma entered the conference room and nearly dropped her portfolio. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains beyond. The space was elegant but understated, with a long table that could seat 20 people comfortably. She was arranging her presentation materials when the door opened behind her. "Sorry to keep you waiting. I got caught up in a call with the Planning Commission." Emma turned toward the familiar voice and felt the world tilt sideways. James Blackwell was Jay, the man she'd been having dinner with for 2 weeks, the stranger who'd held her while she cried, the person she'd been falling for without realizing it, was her boss. He stopped in the doorway when he saw her expression, and the careful mask he wore in business settings slipped for just a moment. In that instant, Emma saw guilt, regret, and something that might have been panic. "Emma." His voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. "You're James Blackwell." It wasn't a question. "Yes." "You're my boss." "Yes." Emma gripped the edge of the conference table, trying to process what this meant. Every conversation they'd had, every meal they'd shared, every moment of connection had been built on a lie. "How long have you known who I was?" she asked. James closed the door and moved toward her slowly, like someone approaching a frightened animal. "Since the night we met. You knew when you offered me this job. I knew when I had David offer you this job." The admission hit her like a physical blow. "You had him offer it to me, not the other way around." "Emma, let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been lying to me for 2 weeks? That you manipulated me into taking a job I thought I earned." Her voice was rising, but she couldn't control it. "That everything between us has been some kind of elaborate game?" "It's not a game." James's composure cracked, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked uncertain. "What happened between us? What's happening between us? It's real. How can I believe anything you say? You've been lying about who you are since the moment we met." "I never lied about who I was. I just didn't tell you my last name." "Don't play word games with me, James. Or Jay. Or whoever you actually are." Emma began gathering her presentation materials with shaking hands. "I can't do this. I can't work here. Please don't leave." He moved closer, and she could see the desperation in his eyes. "Let me explain why I did this." "Why? So you could feel good about helping the poor unemployed architect? So you could have someone grateful enough to sleep with you? That's not what this is about." "Then what is it about?" James ran his hands through his hair, the careful CEO facade completely gone. "I saw you that night at the cafe, and I saw someone who was drowning. Someone who reminded me of myself 5 years ago when my father died, and I inherited this company I never wanted. So you decided to save me. I decided to help you. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you manipulated my entire life. My job, my career, maybe even my feelings. Your feelings are your own, Emma. I can't manipulate those. Can't you? You made yourself indispensable when I was vulnerable. You gave me a job that solved all my problems. You made me dependent on you." James was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Is that really what you think? That I manipulated your feelings?" Emma wanted to say yes, wanted to hold on to her anger because it was easier than confronting the more complicated truth. But looking at him now, seeing the pain in his expression, she couldn't quite convince herself that everything between them had been calculated. "I don't know what to think," she said finally. "I don't know what's real anymore." "This is real." James gestured between them. "The way I feel about you is real. The way you make me feel like I can be myself instead of just a company figurehead, that's real. But you weren't being yourself. You were pretending to be someone else. I was being more myself with you than I've been with anyone in years. The only thing I hid was my last name and what I do for a living. Those aren't small things, James." "I know." He sat down heavily in one of the conference chairs. "I know I should have told you. I wanted to tell you. But every time I tried, I was afraid you'd look at me differently." "Like how?" "Like you're looking at me now." Emma felt tears threatening and blinked them back. She couldn't cry in his office, couldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing how much this hurt. "Did I get this job because I'm qualified, or because you felt sorry for me? You got this job because you're brilliant. Because your design vision is exactly what this city needs. Because every person on this project team has told me you're the best architect they've worked with. But you knew I was qualified before you met me." James hesitated. "I knew your work was impressive. I'd seen the Belltown proposal Miller submitted. So you did research me before that night at the cafe?" "No." His answer was immediate. "I researched you after I realized I wanted to help you. I looked into your background, and discovered your work was exceptional. Emma closed her eyes, trying to sort through the timeline. This is too much. I need time to think. Of course. Take all the time you need. She headed for the door, then turned back. One more question. That night at the cafe, were you there by accident? Complete accident. I go there sometimes when I can't sleep. I never expected to meet you. Emma nodded and left without another word. In the elevator, she finally let the tears fall. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Heard you discovered the truth about your boyfriend. We should talk. V. Emma stared at the message, wondering who V was and how they knew about her morning. But she was too emotionally drained to care about mysterious texts from strangers. She had bigger problems to solve, starting with whether she could ever trust James Blackwell again. Emma spent the rest of Tuesday in her apartment, alternating between fury and heartbreak. She'd turned off her work phone and ignored the dozen texts from James that appeared on her personal device. By evening, she still had no idea what she was going to do about her job or her feelings. That's when her doorbell rang. Ryan stood in the hallway holding a bouquet of white roses, looking exactly like he had 6 months ago when everything in her life still made sense. What are you doing here? Emma asked, not moving to let him in. I made a mistake, Em. A huge mistake. His voice carried the same earnest tone that had once made her feel cherished. Jessica and I, it's over. It was never real. Ryan, you can't just show up here. I never stopped loving you. The thing with Jessica, it was just confusion. Fear about getting married, about committing to forever. He held out the roses. I want to fix this. I want to fix us. Emma stared at him, trying to reconcile this sudden appearance with everything that had happened. You've been with Jessica for 3 weeks. Now you're telling me it meant nothing? It meant nothing. You have to believe me. Something in his tone struck her as rehearsed, but before she could analyze it further, her phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. Check your email. You need to see this. V, who's V? Ryan asked, reading over her shoulder. I don't know. Emma pulled up her email and found a message with several photo attachments. The subject line read, The truth about James Blackwell. The first photo showed James entering an upscale hotel with a woman Emma didn't recognize. The timestamp was from last weekend, while Emma had been working late on the Belltown project. The second photo was taken inside what appeared to be a hotel bar. James sat close to the same woman, their heads bent together in intimate conversation. The third photo made Emma's stomach clench. James and the woman kissing in what looked like a hotel lobby. Who was that? Ryan asked. Emma's hands shook as she scrolled to the final photo. James and the woman entering an elevator together, his hand on her lower back in a gesture that suggested familiarity. The email contained no message, just the photos and a timestamp showing they'd been taken 3 days ago. Emma, are you okay? Ryan moved closer, concern replacing his earlier desperation. Who is this guy? She couldn't answer. The photos felt like physical blows, each one confirming her worst fears about James's motivations. She'd been a charity case, a distraction, nothing more. This is why I came back, Ryan said gently. I heard through mutual friends that you were seeing someone new, someone who might not be what he seems. I was worried about you. Heard from who? Does it matter? The point is, you deserve better than someone who plays games with your heart. Emma's phone rang. James calling again. She declined it. Let me take care of you, Ryan continued. The way I should have been doing all along. We can start over, do things right this time. Before Emma could respond, another text appeared from V. There's more if you want it. Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m., Starbucks on Pine Street. You deserve to know everything. Emma showed Ryan the message. Should I go? Absolutely not. This person could be anyone. They could be dangerous. But Emma was already making up her mind. She needed answers, and James certainly wasn't providing them. Meanwhile, across town in the penthouse suite of the Four Seasons, Victoria Sterling was quite pleased with how her first day back in Seattle had progressed. The photos had been easy to stage. A professional photographer, a hotel suite, and enough champagne to make James look relaxed and intimate with her in carefully angled shots. She'd used similar tactics in London when a rival fashion designer had tried to poach one of her major clients. The key was creating just enough ambiguity to plant doubt while maintaining plausible deniability if confronted directly. Her phone rang, and James's name appeared on the screen. Victoria. His voice was tight with anger. What are you doing? Hello to you too, darling. I'm back in Seattle, obviously. Surprised? Stay away from Emma. Emma? Is that the little architect's name? Such a common name for such a common girl. I'm serious, Victoria. Whatever game you're playing, stop it now. Victoria walked to her window, looking out over the city lights. I'm not playing anything, James. I'm simply protecting what's mine. You gave up any claim to me 5 years ago when you chose your modeling career over our engagement. A temporary lapse in judgment. I've had time to reconsider my priorities. It's too late. I've moved on. Have you? Because from what I can see, you've been playing house with an unemployed nobody who needed you to rescue her. That's not moving on, darling. That's emotional charity work. James was quiet for a moment. How do you know about Emma's situation? I know everything, James, including some things your little girlfriend might find interesting. Such as, oh, I think we should discuss this in person. Tomorrow evening, perhaps? The usual place? I'm not playing your games, Victoria. This isn't a game. Victoria's voice hardened. This is about the future of your company, your reputation, and certain information that could be very damaging if it became public. You're threatening me. I'm offering you a choice. Meet with me tomorrow night, or I start making some very interesting phone calls to investigative journalists. The line went quiet, and Victoria knew she had him. James had always been too noble for his own good. 8 o'clock, he said finally. The Metropolitan Grill. Perfect. Oh, and James, you might want to dress nicely. I have a feeling we'll be celebrating. After hanging up, Victoria opened her laptop and reviewed the dossier her investigator had compiled on Emma Richardson. The woman was more resilient than Victoria had expected, but everyone had a breaking point. Tomorrow, she'd accelerate the timeline. The next afternoon, Emma sat in the crowded Starbucks on Pine Street, nursing a latte she didn't want and watching the door. At exactly 2 o'clock, a woman approached her table. She was stunning in the way that suggested expensive maintenance. Perfectly styled blonde hair, designer clothes that fit like they'd been made for her, and the kind of confident bearing that came from never doubting your place in the world. Emma Richardson? The woman's smile was warm but didn't reach her eyes. I'm Victoria Sterling. Thank you for meeting me. Emma recognized the name immediately. Victoria Sterling was a socialite who appeared regularly in Seattle Magazine's society pages, usually photographed at charity galas and art openings. You're the one who sent those photos. I am, and I'm very sorry you had to see them. Victoria sat down across from Emma, her expression sympathetic. But I thought you deserved to know the truth about James. How do you know James? We were engaged 5 years ago. I broke it off when my modeling career took off in Europe. Victoria's voice carried just the right note of regret. Biggest mistake of my life. Emma felt something cold settle in her stomach. You're his ex-fiancée. I am, and I've spent the last 5 years realizing what I lost. So you're here to win him back. I'm here to save him from making another mistake. Victoria leaned forward, her voice gentle. Emma, James has a pattern. He finds women who need rescuing. Women who make him feel important and necessary. It makes him feel better about himself. You don't know anything about our relationship. I know he gave you a job when you were unemployed. I know he swooped in right after your life fell apart. I know he's been lying to you about who he is. Victoria's voice remained kind, but her words were surgical in their precision. The James I knew collected broken things. Beautiful, talented broken things that made him feel like a hero. Emma wanted to argue, but the pattern Victoria described matched exactly what had happened. Those photos, Emma said. When were they taken? 3 nights ago. The same night you texted him that you were working late. Victoria pulled out her phone and showed Emma additional photos. He called me that evening. Said he needed to talk to someone who understood the pressure of his position. The additional photos showed James and Victoria in what appeared to be an intimate dinner conversation, their body language suggesting familiarity and comfort. He's confused, Emma. Torn between his feelings for you and his unresolved feelings for me. It's not fair to any of us. Emma stared at the photos, feeling the foundation of everything she'd started to believe crumbling beneath her. What do you want from me? She asked. I want you to protect yourself. James is going to hurt you, whether he means to or not. He can't help himself. Victoria reached across the table and touched Emma's hand gently. You deserve someone who chooses you first, not someone who settles for you because you need him. That evening, Emma sat in her apartment staring at her phone. She drafted a dozen texts to James and deleted them all. What was there to say? That she'd seen the photos? That she'd met his ex-fiancé? That she felt like a fool for believing their connection was real? Her doorbell rang again. This time it was Ryan, carrying takeout from their old favorite Thai restaurant. "Thought you might not feel like cooking," he said. Emma let him in because she couldn't bear to be alone with her thoughts anymore. "Have you decided what you're going to do?" Ryan asked as they sat on her couch. "I think I need to resign. Find another job. Start over somewhere else." "Maybe that's for the best." Ryan moved closer to her on the couch. "We could start over too. Together this time." Before Emma could respond, her phone lit up with a notification. A news alert about a major business deal involving Blackwell Enterprises. The accompanying photo showed James at what appeared to be a business dinner, but Emma recognized his dinner companion immediately. Victoria Sterling, looking radiant and possessive as she touched his arm across the table. Emma turned off her phone and moved into Ryan's arms, letting him hold her while she tried to convince herself that forgetting James Blackwell was what she wanted to do. Emma spent Thursday morning drafting her resignation letter. She'd called in sick to avoid facing James, but she couldn't hide forever. The professional thing to do was resign, finish her current projects, and move on with whatever remained of her dignity. She was refining the wording when someone knocked on her apartment door. Emma assumed it was Ryan again, bringing more comfort food and gentle pressure to give their relationship another chance. Instead, she found a young woman who looked vaguely familiar, with shoulder-length brown hair and nervous energy that reminded Emma of herself during job interviews. "Ms. Richardson? I'm Sarah Sterling. I work at Blackwell Enterprises in the communications department." Emma recognized the last name immediately. "You're Victoria's sister." "I am, and I need to tell you something important about what's been happening." Emma hesitated. After yesterday's revelations, she wasn't sure she could handle more bad news. But something in Sarah's expression suggested urgency rather than malice. "Come in," Emma said, stepping aside. Sarah sat on the edge of Emma's couch, clutching a small recording device. "I need you to know that everything Victoria showed you yesterday was staged. The photos, the stories about James's pattern with women, all of it." "Why would you tell me that?" "She's your sister." "Because what she's doing is wrong, and I can't be part of it anymore." Sarah's voice shook slightly. "Victoria's been planning this for months. When her modeling career started declining, she decided she wanted James back. She's been monitoring his activities, waiting for the right opportunity." Emma sat down across from her. "What kind of opportunity?" "A vulnerability she could exploit. When she learned about you, she saw her chance." "How did she learn about me?" Sarah looked uncomfortable. "She's had investigators watching James for 2 years. They reported his behavioral changes, the fact that he was spending time with someone new." Emma felt sick. "So she knew about us before she came to Seattle. She knew James was interested in someone. She flew back specifically to break you apart." "The photos were fake? Staged?" "Victoria rented a hotel suite, hired a photographer, and manipulated the settings to make it look like she and James were having an affair. James thought he was meeting her for a business dinner to discuss her late father's foundation. He had no idea he was being photographed." Emma stared at the recording device in Sarah's hands. "You have proof of this?" "Victoria's been bragging about her plan to anyone who'll listen. She thinks it's clever." Sarah pressed play, and Victoria's voice filled the room. "The little architect is more resilient than I expected, but everyone has a breaking point. A few strategically timed photos, some well-placed doubt about James's motivations, and she'll do the work for me." Another voice, male, responded, "What if Blackwell doesn't take you back?" "He will, especially once the board votes him out, and I'm the only option to save his company." Emma's blood ran cold. "She's trying to get James fired?" Sarah nodded grimly. "She's been spreading rumors about his judgment, questioning his leadership decisions, suggesting he's distracted by personal relationships. She's also been shorting Blackwell stock and encouraging other investors to do the same." "Can she do that?" Victoria inherited significant holdings when her father died. Combined with her connections in the financial world, she has enough influence to create serious problems. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. "Why are you telling me this? You could get in serious trouble if Victoria finds out." "Because I've watched my sister destroy people before, and I'm tired of being complicit." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "She ruined my college boyfriend's reputation when he broke up with her. She's sabotaged business deals for companies that didn't hire her. This is who she is, and I can't watch her do it to James." What does she want exactly? She wants James to marry her. She thinks if his company is in crisis, he'll turn to her for support, and she can position herself as the solution to all his problems. Emma stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Somewhere in one of those buildings, James was probably dealing with the crisis Victoria had orchestrated, unaware that Emma knew the truth. There's more, Sarah continued. Victoria's planning something for tomorrow night. Blackwell Enterprises is hosting their annual investor dinner at the Fairmont. It's a big event, lots of media coverage. What kind of something? I'm not sure exactly, but she's been making arrangements. Photographers, reporters, something about making a public statement. Emma turned back to Sarah. She's going to announce their engagement. That would be my guess. Create a fait accompli that James can't easily back out of without damaging his company further. Emma felt a surge of anger unlike anything she'd experienced before. Victoria had manipulated her life, destroyed her trust in James, and now planned to trap him in a loveless marriage for her own gain. We have to stop her, Emma said. You have evidence of her manipulation. I have inside knowledge of how she's been playing both James and me. Together, we can expose her. Sarah looked nervous. Victoria is not someone you want as an enemy. She has resources, connections. And she has weaknesses. Her arrogance, for one. She thinks she's smarter than everyone else. Emma's mind was already working through possibilities. You said there's media coverage tomorrow night? Extensive. It's one of the biggest business events of the year. Then that's where we'll expose her. Publicly, with witnesses, in a way she can't spin or cover up. How? Emma was quiet for a moment, thinking through the logistics. The recordings you have, are there more? Hours of them. Victoria documents everything, thinking it makes her clever. Can you get them to play through the hotel sound system? I work in communications. I know the technical crew for these events. Sarah was beginning to look intrigued rather than terrified. But if we do this, there's no going back. Victoria will come after both of us. Let her try? Sometimes the truth is the best defense. They spent the next 2 hours planning. Sarah would work with the technical crew to ensure the recordings could be broadcast during Victoria's planned announcement. Emma would find a way to get James to the event despite everything that had happened between them. There's something else you should know, Sarah said as she prepared to leave. The way James looks at you, talks about you, it's not what Victoria claims. He's not collecting broken things. He's genuinely in love with you. Emma felt her chest tighten. How do you know? I've worked for his company for 3 years. I've seen him with other women, including Victoria when they were engaged before. This is different. After Sarah left, Emma sat with her phone in her hands, trying to decide how to approach James. She couldn't simply call and explain everything. Victoria might be monitoring his communications. She needed a way to get his attention without alerting Victoria to their plan. Finally, she typed a simple text. I know about the photos. Meet me tomorrow at the Moonlight Cafe, 7 p.m. Trust me. His response came immediately. Emma, thank God. I can explain everything. Just be there, she replied. Emma spent the rest of the day researching Victoria Sterling, learning about her family's business empire and her pattern of using personal relationships for professional gain. By evening, she felt armed with enough information to make their plan work. But first, she had to convince James to trust her one more time. The next morning brought news that confirmed Sarah's warnings. The Seattle Business Journal ran a front-page story questioning James Blackwell's leadership, suggesting his company was vulnerable to hostile takeover due to questionable personal decisions affecting professional judgment. Emma knew Victoria was behind the story, just as she'd been behind everything else. Time was running out. That afternoon, Emma called Ryan and gently but firmly ended whatever reconciliation he'd been hoping for. She'd spent too long letting other people make decisions about her life. It was time to fight for what she actually wanted. And what she wanted was the truth, justice for Victoria's victims, and a chance to see if the connection she'd felt with James was real enough to survive everything they'd been through. Tomorrow night would determine all of that. Emma arrived at the Moonlight Cafe 15 minutes early, choosing the same corner table where everything had started 3 weeks ago. The irony wasn't lost on her that their story might end where it began. James walked through the door at exactly 7 o'clock, looking like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw her, relief flooded his features so completely that Emma felt her resolve waver for a moment. Thank you for coming, she said as he sat down across from her. Emma, I need you to know that those photos Victoria sent you were staged. I never touched her, never kissed her. The whole thing was orchestrated. I know. James stopped mid-sentence. You know? Your sister-in-law filled me in. Sarah Sterling came to see me yesterday with some very interesting recordings. Sarah? Victoria's sister works for my company, but I didn't realize she knew about any of this. Emma pulled out her phone and played a portion of one of Sarah's recordings. Victoria's voice filled the space between them, detailing her manipulation with casual cruelty. James listened in stunned silence, his jaw tightening with each revealed detail of Victoria's plan. She's been orchestrating everything, Emma said when the recording ended. My job interview, the photos, even Ryan's sudden return. All of it designed to break us apart, so she could step in as your savior. The timing makes sense now. The board meeting, the investor concerns, the media stories questioning my leadership. James rubbed his face with both hands. She's been building a case for my removal while positioning herself as the solution. There's more. She's planning something at tonight's investor dinner. Sarah thinks she's going to announce your engagement publicly, create a situation where you can't refuse without damaging the company further. James was quiet for a long moment. What do you want to do? We're going to stop her. Tonight, in front of everyone. Emma, Victoria has resources. If we move against her and fail, she'll destroy both of us. If we don't move against her, she wins anyway. Emma reached across the table and took his hand. James, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Anything. That night we met, when you helped me, was any part of you motivated by wanting to control the situation or fix me? James was quiet for so long that Emma started to worry about his answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful and thoughtful. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some element of wanting to help someone who was hurting. But Emma, what I felt that night, what I still feel, it's not about fixing you. It's about wanting to be the person you see when you look at me. What do you mean? With you, I'm not the CEO or the company heir or the guy who inherited a business he never wanted. I'm just someone you chose to trust, someone you let comfort you when you needed it most. James's grip on her hand tightened. You make me feel like myself instead of like a role I'm playing. Emma felt tears threaten, but pushed them back. They had work to do. Then let's go save your company. 2 hours later, the grand ballroom at the Fairmont Hotel buzzed with Seattle's business elite. Emma stood near the back, wearing a borrowed black dress from Sarah and trying to blend in with the other guests. She'd never attended an event this upscale, but tonight she belonged here as much as anyone. James worked the room with practiced ease, but Emma could see the tension in his shoulders. Victoria hadn't made her move yet, but the evening was young. Sarah appeared at Emma's elbow, holding a small wireless device. Everything's ready. When Victoria takes the microphone, I can override the sound system with the recordings. How much of the plan does James know? Just that we're going to expose her tonight. I thought it was better if his reactions were genuine. Emma nodded, watching Victoria across the room. She looked radiant in a silver gown that probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent, working the crowd with the confidence of someone who believed victory was assured. At 9 o'clock, the formal program began. James took the stage to give his annual address to investors, discussing company growth and future projects. He looked calm and authoritative, giving no indication of the chaos Victoria had been orchestrating behind the scenes. When he finished, scattered applause filled the room. As he started to leave the podium, Victoria stood up from her front row table. Actually, if I may, I'd like to add something to James's remarks. Emma felt her pulse quicken. This was it. Victoria approached the microphone with the grace of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. The room quieted, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Many of you know me as Victoria Sterling, and you know about my family's long-standing business relationship with Blackwell Enterprises. Her voice carried perfectly through the sound system. Tonight, I want to share some personal news that I believe will strengthen both our companies going forward. Emma caught Sarah's eye across the room and nodded. James and I have been rekindling our relationship over the past few months, Victoria continued, and I'm thrilled to announce that we're engaged to be married. Gasps rippled through the crowd. James stepped forward, his expression thunderous. Victoria, that's not true. Of course it's true, darling. Don't be modest. Victoria smiled at the crowd. I know James prefers to keep his personal life private, but I think our investors deserve to know that Blackwell Enterprises will benefit from the Sterling family's full support and resources going forward. I am not engaged to you, James said into the microphone, his voice carrying clearly through the room. Victoria's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. James, you're embarrassing yourself. We discussed this. That's when Sarah triggered the sound system. Victoria's own voice filled the ballroom, crystal clear and unmistakable. The little architect is more resilient than I expected, but everyone has a breaking point. A few strategically timed photos, some well-placed doubt about James's motivations, and she'll do the work for me. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Victoria's face went white as she recognized her own words. The recording continued, detailing Victoria's manipulation of Emma, her plans to damage James's company, and her intention to force a marriage through financial coercion. She ruined my college boyfriend's reputation when he broke up with her. She sabotaged business deals for companies that didn't hire her. This is who she is. That was Sarah's voice on the recording, and Emma saw Victoria scan the crowd frantically, looking for her sister. Turn it off, Victoria demanded, lunging for the sound system controls. But the recording played on, revealing her stock manipulation, her bribery of media contacts, and her detailed plans to destroy both Emma's career and James's company. When the recording finally ended, the ballroom was silent except for the clicking of camera phones and the whispers of reporters. James stepped back to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to be absolutely clear. I am not engaged to Victoria Sterling. I have not been in a relationship with her. What you just heard confirms that she has been systematically attempting to manipulate both my personal life and my company's business operations. You can't prove any of that, Victoria said, but her voice lacked its earlier confidence. Actually, we can. Emma stepped forward from the back of the room. I'm Emma Richardson, the architect Victoria referred to in those recordings. I can testify to her manipulation, and I believe the FBI will be very interested in the stock manipulation and fraud charges. As if summoned by her words, several federal agents entered the ballroom. Sarah had made more than just technical arrangements for the evening. Victoria Sterling, you're under arrest for securities fraud, conspiracy, and attempted extortion. The arrest happened quickly and efficiently. Victoria maintained her composure until the handcuffs clicked into place. Then her carefully constructed facade finally cracked. This isn't over, she said, looking directly at Emma as the agents led her away. Actually, it is, Emma replied. As the ballroom emptied and the reporters rushed to file their stories, James and Emma found themselves alone near the stage. I can't believe it's over, James said. Are you okay? Your company, the board vote? After tonight's revelations, I think the board will be more concerned about the damage Victoria could have caused if we hadn't stopped her. James moved closer to Emma. But I'm more concerned about us. Us. Emma, I know I hurt you. I know I should have told you who I was from the beginning. But I need you to know that everything I felt, everything between us, it was real. Emma looked at him. This man who'd held her when she cried, who'd given her a chance when no one else would, who'd been willing to risk everything to stop Victoria's plan. I know it was real, she said. I felt it too. What happens now? Now we start over. Honestly this time. No more secrets. James smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him all evening. I'd like that very much. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. Even though I'm your boss, especially because you're my boss. Someone needs to keep you in line. James laughed and pulled her into his arms. I love you, Emma Richardson. I love you too, James Blackwell. 6 months later, the wedding was small, held in the garden of Emma's favorite restaurant in Fremont. 50 guests, including Sarah Sterling, who'd become Emma's close friend after testifying against her sister. Victoria had been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison and ordered to pay millions in restitution. Emma wore her grandmother's dress and carried roses from James's garden. David Carter walked her down the aisle since her father couldn't make the trip from Chicago. You sure about this? Carter whispered as they approached the altar. Never been more sure of anything, Emma replied. 2 years later, Emma stood in the lobby of the Richardson Blackwell Foundation for Young Architects, holding her 3-month-old daughter, Lily, while reviewing applications for their first round of scholarships. Any promising candidates? James asked, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee. A dozen at least. This program is going to change lives. James smiled and kissed the top of Lily's head. Just like someone changed mine. Our lives changed each other, Emma corrected. That's how the best love stories work. Outside, Seattle buzzed with its usual energy, but inside their foundation offices, Emma felt the same peace she'd discovered that night in the Moonlight Cafe. Sometimes the best things in life began with a desperate moment and a stranger willing to offer comfort. Sometimes love really could conquer everything.